way to kick things off. Another Infernal Drake.
Fire burns forever between SK Telecom and KT Rolster. It was before League of Legends. It will also last longer than League of Legends, you'd have to imagine. Whatever esport is around in Korea, we will see KT and SKT butting heads. And it's always a treat to watch.
Yep. The telecom war rages on for time eternal.
So Veigar, you were talking about the mid lane matchup.
Yes.
Obviously, he is going to have heavy problems with the sustained trades in lane when it comes to harass. With the mage rework changes, he gets a lot more ability power than he used to because he's able to just get in, and any sort of damage trade that he does actually gives him ability power as well. So those ability power numbers should be through the roof. The way this comp will function, I mentioned the split push element. The other thing that KT have is a pick comp, because if they ever get vision control, pink wards come down, anything along those ilk, Alistar, Elise, and the Veigar can get a pick, and then if they can explode someone, then they can look to fight 5v4. But if we see even 5v5 fights, if we see SKT control the map like they were able to in Game 1, that's where the comp falls apart for KT, because Jhin is only as strong as his front line, and specifically the...
They get the flash away from the Lissandra, and now the ping's coming out onto this Baron by SK Telecom. This would be a really greedy play looking for the Death Rush, but Trace just going to throw out the pillar. Gets that vision.
Well, they know that Graves has to recall. Kuzan probably has to recall as well.
Right now, of course, SKT only playing that one game. Complete that. With all of the stats.
Had a day out. It was a great performance this time. I don't think he's going to be able to do it.
Neither do I.
If not for the brashness and just bulldoze the opponent.
Well, you mentioned that Tarek is going to be banned away, as is Echo here to finish off the bans from SK Telecom, and Kindred, the final one from KT Rolster. So don't want Blank to get his hands on that. They know that he's quite adept with that champion. So yeah, not seeing that Sightstone second.
That poke dealing some damage. Yeah, definitely a good question. Will be the Echo band. The first few minutes before
the support, they're like, oh, well, I guess I'm stuck doing. Mentioned, might see banking later today. Little unlikely, I think, with this matchup.
The big teleport plays, and they overwhelmed the was reaching for this champion in many scenarios as well. And Faker is sides. That's a lot of respect to Tarek. Will that be enough to stop the multiple invulnerability comps that KT would like? Because you can swap out one, it's just when you ban away two of those champions, you'll have issues. And yeah, the Zillion comes through, banned away on red. Kindred is available, and that seems like the preeminent jungle choice, given that Nidalee is off the table.
Yep. So will be the first pickup here for Score in the jungle. Of course, Score historically, if he gets ahead, KT usually comes to a victory. It's been a little bit rough lately.
How do you like this story, Achilles? This is what SKT does sometimes. They're like, you know, some people go for flex picks. Some people try to like hide as much information as possible. SKT reach for both of their solo lanes. They're not worried about counter picks. They're just going for power. Of course, you expect there to be a lot of lane pressure for Duke on the Echo. Someday was reaching for this champion in many scenarios as well. And Faker has become a Lulu main in spring and now an Azir main in summer.
Yep, we'll see how long that lasts, though, with the upcoming changes in 6.11. Might very drastically affect the desire to pick up the bird on your team. But you never know, the Echo could be a flex. We saw... I can't even finish the sentence. We saw Peanut use it in the jungle.
We did.
And
we didn't like that
we
very
never want to see it again.
Someday picking up the Maokai will make a lot of sense. He has a 78% win rate on Maokai over 35 games. Score has been mousing over Aurelion Sol consistently.
Okay.
Locks it in. Always struck me as the sort of player that would play that Aurelion Sol, so it'd be good to see. Heavily expecting it to be mid lane, but I guess there's an outside chance of it being support.
That is
the reason why I say it is that Wolf actually on the side of SKT was messing around with Aurelion Sol support. There's reasons why it doesn't strike you as a strong support, because of course the orbiting spheres are shown while you're in brush, but just because of where it was locked in, remember, we could have just seen Fly lock it in for himself. There's an outside chance it'll go to another lane, but coming back to SKT, Elise and Rek'Sai are the preeminent junglers available. Rek'Sai would give them the tremor sense. We are in a meta now with Blue Trinket's nerf. The vision is very hard to put together. It might have a lot of pressure in lane, so you could understand the Rek'Sai lock. But when it came down to the big match, when Blank needed to perform, what did he pick 3 games in a row against CLG? It was that Elise that has the lane pressure. His mechanics are on point with it as well, so either or is understandable, but I think the Elise suits SKT better.
Yeah, and of course, Ezreal for Bang. What's more suitable than that? I mean, a champion that he says, you know, I don't even have fun playing this champion anymore.
Actually, if you track back the Korean, he actually said, I don't have fun playing League of Legends anymore.
Oh, that's very true. That's right. He said overall. But
he's been playing it a lot. That's no comment on the quality of the game. That's just the fact that as a pro player, it's your job. But sometimes he gets to have fun, and maybe not Ezreal, the champion that gives him the most fun.
Yeah, doesn't seem that way, but definitely one of the champions that we know him for. And KT,
they're always going to flash the Draven until they finally lock it in. I don't know if Arrow gets his 1 Draven game a season today, but it would be a painful laning phase against the Ezreal. One that's manageable, though. SKT returning to their style that they showed at the MSI final, last picking support. Probably going to be one of those range supports. Soraka would be very much a plug-and-play decision they've been running recently.
I mean, we've been seeing a hell of a lot of it, especially going up in lane against the Nami. It's going to be Jhin here for Arrow, and then Nami for Johnny.
The Jhin lock-in is really interesting. We saw KT beat Longzhu playing Jhin a couple of days ago, specifically because there wasn't the damage take down the front line, but it's worth noting that Echo and Elise are not the same front line as the likes of Maokai and Rek'Sai that we saw in that series, so potentially Jhin could do some work. We see another team messing around with Jhin. It was almost a Rocks Tigers special last season when Frey was playing it a lot. We mentioned the Soraka. It's expected to be the support choice.
Kramer had a bit of it as well.
True. I mean, a couple of people messed with it. Soul actually played it as well for Kongdu Monster, but it definitely didn't really impress outside of Praise games.
Who else played it? Was it Nuclear?
Fury played a game of it as well.
Soul
Soul from Kongdu Monster was playing it.
Okay, yeah, I remember Fury playing it, and it was very...
And it's the Soraka. So, again, very SK Telecom, patch 6.8, now patch 6.10. Not much has changed in their drafting style. Top lane is going to be the interesting one. Echo is going to have the lane pressure advantage, but someday is on his old trusty Maokai that really brought the game back. Remember, the game was up to be won, specifically game 2 of the series against Longzhu, and then someday made the big teleport plays, and they overwhelmed the Jhin comp. Now it's Jhin and Maokai on the same team, and Aurelion Soul mid. It's going to be probably the Summoner Spell heal. Players don't feel the need to take teleport just because you have access to that E to make it between lanes. It's just one of those things where you look at certain players like Clearlove and you think you know their jungle, their champion pool. Same story with Fly. He plays the Malzahar, so of course he plays the Aurelion Soul. But how will he do in lane against Faker? That's the new question.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one too. But it also, just going up against an Ezreal who's obviously going to build that Iceborne Gauntlet is going to negate a lot of the mobility that Aurelion Soul has. I mean, you just clip him with a True Shot Barrage, you know he's coming down mid, you just clip him with that, and suddenly he's on the ground. Cooldown comes in, and he can't just come floating into your lane anymore.
It's a good point, but the front line for KT will be very powerful. We're talking about Maokai, Aurelion Soul will build tanky, and so they'll have a decent front line to tank up the damage from Ezreal, and then it's the AD carries that honestly the big differing point. Never really sure how to conceptualize Jhin. Some games he seems to really power through, other games he struggles, but tried and true for basically all of SK Telecom. Power picks across the board.
Yep, well, let's see who's going to come out on top and get straight into this first game of the Telecom War. It's KT versus SKT. Alrighty, here we go onto the Rift. We can see that the Infernal Drake will be the first one to poke its head out.
It didn't need an Infernal Drake to make it a fiery one, Achilles, but it sure does help.
It sure will help, and it'll help either of these teams close out the game over the other. We'll have to see what else we get, because if we get an Infernal and Mount Drakes going back and forth, that'll make for one nice competitive match. There you can see some fan signs coming out for Faker and Someday.
Someday in an interview said that his wrist problems that plagued him during spring are behind him, so that the fans don't need to worry about that anymore. Good. Sticking with his power pick, I think Maokai this week might eclipse Renekton as his most played champion of all time, and the win rate is significantly higher, so it's not necessarily a Maokai one trick, but he looks good when he plays the tree. Lane swap has been initiated by Katie, but you can see on your minimap, SKT are looking to call it.
Yep, it's just going to be them rotating around as they push in toward that blue buff.
Speaking of rotating.
Yeah, those orbs coming through, really chipping down Faker.
There's a big sustain advantage to Fly. Has always gone for the corrupting potion. That's a really interesting adaptation. Doran's is almost always the mid lane choice of starting item, but
I mean, do you think that that's going to lead straight to a Dark Seal here in the mid lane, or do you think it's just the corrupting potion to get that little bit of extra sustain, and then he'll go back and start building that, you know, that more tanky build like you mentioned earlier?
So it's good that you bring up the Dark Seal, because you have so many extra back timings. More great harass comes through between these two.
Trading back quite well between the two of them. One more charge of the potion.
Fly has the combat summon. He has summoned a spell heal, so Faker needs to be careful in that regard. But coming back to the itemization, remember that Aurelion Sol's playstyle, as exemplified by Huhi, is a lot of quick backs. Because you have access to your E, you can get back to lane as if you're powerballing like Rammus, and so you can get earlier shops. Once you pick up 365 gold, go get that Dark Seal, then get a Dorrance. Because you're getting so many bonus shops, refilling your corrupting potion charges, it makes a lot of sense to either pick up the Dorrance later or maybe even skip out at it, depending on your gold time.
Yeah. Makes sense, and right now Faker's not going to be at a point where he can shove the lane and get, you know, those Arise passive charges onto the turrets, so you don't have to worry about having that shipped down early either.
And that's an interaction that we won't have to worry about at all.
Yeah.
In very, very short amount of time,
It'll be gone. And probably so will Azir.
You know, there's a chance, but we all thought Azir was gone once upon a time and he stuck around. So I, for one, won't be sad to see the back of Victor versus Azir every other game. But
I have an Aurelion Sol versus Azir, so changes are already coming in, Papa.
See, the upside of Azir as a mid lane staple is that at least he has playmaking ability. You know, you can really appreciate a good Azir set play.
I mean, we saw Fakers just from the last game.
Absolutely.
Going in underneath of the inhibitor tower, scooping up a Maokai.
So we'll see what plug-and-play choice replaces Azir as the most staple, because if it's Victor, then again, you lose some of that playmaking ability. So let's hope it's something with fun initiation mechanics. Maybe some Talia.
We're going to get Ziggs and Xerath again.
Look, we saw Ziggs in the LCS earlier today. It lost, thankfully, because we don't want anyone getting any pesky ideas around Korea.
Yeah.
We remember the last time Ziggs was here. And, it was sad times.
It's like the Cold War of League of Legends.
I mean, absolutely. Ziggs versus Xerath as a laning match.
Actually, it's more like the Korean War of League of Legends, because that's still going on. Those matches lasted an eternity.
Very, very true. But they're years removed, and Ziggs has changed a little bit since then, so I have to feel with the change to Baron buff that the Stall-Out Fest would be at least 10 minutes shorter, but 10 minutes shorter of forever is still a long time.
Yeah. We've actually been seeing some surprisingly fast games so far at the beginning of this split, too. We've got a lot of sub-30, and then even then, you know, within 35 minutes of each other.
I mean, the big story is you have to fight more often. You cannot give up elemental drakes depending on which spawn comes through. So dragons are heavily contested. No longer is it, well, the enemy team has 2, what does 3 and 4 matter? We'll fight for the 5th one.
Yeah.
That's not the sort of story you have. Every dragon is precious. Every dragon needs to be fought for. So we're seeing more fights. That's more snowball. That's more gold on people earlier. And the result is some very watchable League of Legends. I think it's actually been 2 great weeks of champions so far.
Yeah, been highly competitive. But of course, with those changes, Rift Herald has just kind of become the unwanted one on the map.
Did you want to say stepsister or something?
I was going to say something along those lines, but somebody out there is going to be watching that. And
you want to be gender neutral.
Yeah, they don't want to. I don't want to offend anybody.
Really? What about NALCS fans? You seem to offend them all the time.
They're not. Those aren't people.
Oh. Well. Hey, that's still going on. We need that viewership.
I know, I'm just kidding. Duke, though, going to take a lot of damage on his bot side. Has to burn the flash.
A nice patient play from Score, and someday they didn't use the twisted advance until much later. Oh, in mid lane.
Yeah, Faker going in to get some damage. Will get stunned up. Not going to be able to finalize a kill. Duke just going to get the shield from the parallel convergence. Score not going to get caught by that one. He's going to go straight in on the Someday, who's taking up the tower. Nicely Duke is just not going to get out of this one.
So clean from KT Rolster. This is the sort of play that they oscillate between clean, decisive lead, because Arrow's all alone.
Yep, getting silence as he stands in that field. The bubble comes through, and now bang! Going to get hit up by that Ignite. Gets one more hit in. Will finish him off, and Blank coming in on the backside. Will he get the Cocoon? It's not going to happen. And Johnny takes a bit of damage from the Starfall, but it's just going to be Arrow going down in that top side.
Almost a re-engage, almost a 1-for-1 trade, especially considering that Blank was coming in to make it a 3v2, so someone would have died even with the mechanics. They don't quite get the 1-for-1, but across the map, the win goes over to KT, and in the mid lane, the trading never stops between these two. A lot of feeling.
Faker taking a ton of damage.
Oh, he's still going.
Forward by Fly. Faker,
can he hit the ult?
Gonna respect the ult. Does land. Can Fly hit these last
the range,
few stars?
Please.
Throws out the Q. It's not going to connect. And now Fly in a really bad spot, and Faker says, you know what? You're going to go down. You come this far in, taking you out.
We talked about fighting with fire. Fly, this whole laning phase has been chipping away at Faker. But then he goes full solo queue with the turret dive. Unnecessary. Didn't seem to know the range as well. Didn't have boots to have the movement speed to get the damage in, and thusly punished.
Yeah, really nicely and patiently played there by Faker.
Really poor from Fly. You should never see play like that at the highest level, especially in such an important match. One that can really tiptoe your season. And although it's just another best of 3 in a long 18 best of 3 season, it's never just another game when it's KT Rolster versus SKT.
Yep. Fly, maybe not knowing the limitations of that Aurelion Soul quite just yet. You can see, though, it's going to give SKT enough confidence to move over to this Infernal Drake. We'll take it at about the 8-minute mark. So a nice early-ish dragon start to come out, and those stats are going to start stacking up.
And the fire burns again, Achilles. Another Infernal Drake next.
Gonna keep it going, and I mean...
It'd be great if there was 3 Infernal Drakes. That's when you're like, scripted, question mark?
Yeah, I mean, that just sounds really dirty as well for Faker on the Azir, getting that many extra stats.
In general, there's 4 decent damage dealers on the side of SKT.
Yeah.
Fly doing his best to hold the minion wave. Doesn't turn bottom lane.
Okay.
That happened.
Yeah, so Wolf is just dead. I guess he got rooted and popped by... We'll have to hopefully get a replay of that one so we can see exactly how that one turned out, because he got a little bit of chip damage off onto him and then backed off, and then suddenly we come back and he's dead.
So the reason why we can't talk about a little bit of chip damage is look at the itemization from Arrow. This is not a build you see from
he's got a Dirk.
Jint. He's gone for a Dirk. That's not a Caulfield's Warhammer. That's not going to be either Infinity Edge or the more staple choice when it comes. It's not a BF sword first time. It's looking like it's going to be Yomu's Ghostblade Jhin.
Be really interesting. We'll see how this one turned out. So Wolf just
doesn't respect the W, and the Dirk damage, just 229 last order from the Jhin just kills him.
Oh, Faker going in, gets the Emperor's Divide onto Fly. Here comes Blank as well. That's a dead Star Dragon. He's going to fall. Blank finding the kill for himself, and SKT are just going to keep this train moving along the tracks.
Had decent vision on the left side, but not deep enough to spot Blank coming in. He was the assist that got them the kill pressure. And now, with the Summoner spells down after the greedy turret dive, SKT targeting out the young mid laner from KT Rolster.
Yeah. Doing a good job of it. We can see Faker not going to be going for anything like the Abyssal Scepter start, just going to be going straight for that Nashor's Tooth with the double Doran's Ring in tow. Meanwhile, Fly
is flying.
He's going to be, he is flying. He's going to be splitting up a little bit.
Look at that turret health, just giving free time to a Stinger Azir. This is the result you get.
Yep, 6-11 will say no more. Still get some good damage in, but not nearly that much.
Needs to be quick with the blue buff pickup, or he will lose that turret.
Oh, well, Tidal Wave's going to come out on the bot side, and Johnny going to take some damage, so just throwing that one out there.
That was interesting.
Yeah. I guess he was looking for the Tidal Wave into the easy route from Arrow and maybe some follow-up, but Wolf just was like, oh, I'll just slide to the left.
I mean, Bang still had his heal up to help out the Soraka. It was very much to try and kill Soraka, but didn't look realistic in that particular scenario. But I want to talk a little bit more about the itemization. So no Essence Reaver suggested by this, but of course could come in later.
Yeah.
Also, the Infinity Edge. Those are the two starting items we see. So Youmuu's Ghost Blade on Jhin. When you get the last auto attack in, you're going to have an immense amount of movement speed between the active and also the passive that comes through.
Yeah.
So going to have a lot of maneuverability, and flat armor penetration in his ult means that early game, this damage should be pretty big.
They're just going to open up with the Jhin ultimate as they try to get on the Wolf. Here comes Someday with the TP. He's going to get locked up by the bubble, and he goes down. Hachani finds the kill. Someday kiting up on the front side.
The catch blank as
well.
well.
Oh, wow, they do catch blank, and he has to flash over the wall. That'll get him to safety, so just TPUs, but they find a kill again onto Wolf.
You just see the power of Serrated Dirk as an item. One of the reasons that these Youmuu's AD carries are doing so well is the ability to get the flat AD, but specifically 10 armor penetration against the very low armor bot lane opponents just opens up plays like that. When you have AD abilities, like Jhin does, of course, you can open up very big slow and plenty of damage. Maokai comes in, and you have to respect the laning power, the laning supremacy, especially when it's a champion whose itemizations are for scaling against a champion who's bought the most powerful 1,200 gold item amount imaginable.
Yeah. Well, that kill and assist is going to be quite nice here as Arrow continues along this build path. Faker trying to get in to finish off this turret, but not quite going to be able to do it due to that W. Duke going in for a trade on a Someday. Does have Hachani and Score waiting in the wings, so now Duke going to have to hightail it out. Already blows the flash to get in.
Three-man dive, but
here comes
here.
Blank. Yeah, they cannot get the lockup. Somebody's going to go back in here. Huge amounts of damage comes down in and locks up Duke, and he falls. Blank now on the run. They will lose Someday in the end, but it's going to be a 1-for-1, top for top.
Again, because SKT used less resources, advantage SKT. Someday flashed away, but wasn't able to flash into the radius of the Lamb's Respite. At the same time, Aurelion Sol forced out of lane. They lose mid lane turret. They lose a lot of map pressure from this. We're even in kill score, but the turret and some of the CS values mean that SKT have a slight lead.
Yeah, it's about 1,500 gold or close to it here. And then that second dragon, as you mentioned, the Infernal Drake, yet again, going to be coming up here in just under a minute. If SK Telecom can get that for themselves, I mean, that's a huge amount of stats. 16% increase. That would do wonders for them, especially with this Gnasher's Tooth completed here for Faker, as well as the Sorcerer's Shoes. So he's going to be pumping out a good amount of damage. Down the bottom side, we can see Bang has finished off the Manamune, and it's going to be stacking up very steadily for himself.
Even though the kill involvements have been good from the side of KT, it's worth knowing that CS advantage, actually 20 for Bang, despite the fact that he has a build that's intent for scaling compared
35
to
for Faker in the mid lane.
The immediate power, and as you mentioned, with all the chipping out that's happened to the Aurelion Sol and the 2 deaths, 35 CS advantage means that a lot of that difference in gold is purely on CS values it's gotten from smart lane snowballing in both mid and bot lane.
But also look at Fly's items right now. He's got Boots of Swiftness with the Catalyst and then a Negatron Cloak. His build is going to be so delayed.
He wasn't even able to fit in the Dark Seal. Of course, after dying, it isn't the ideal time to build what is on some level a stacking item.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you're right. It's going to most likely still be the Rod of Ages that's going to be significantly delayed.
25 and a half, 26 minutes before he can complete that. With all of the stacking, we see KT are going to go ahead and start up this Drake. It would be their first Infernal, second for SK Telecom. So they certainly want that extra 8% increased stats, but they're not going to be willing to fight over this one. So just going to be 1-1 on the board.
But the big cost here from the side of KT is that Someday was the only laner with a CS advantage and walked all the way from top to the Dragon to ensure the pickup. Neither top laner had teleport, so they had to walk. So they do invest sacrificing CS on the only person doing well for the Infernal Drake.
A true root there from Arrow, not going to land. We'll have to see how this Youmuu's is going to do for him in these extended trades.
I mean, that answer's pretty obvious. Going to do pretty well. 20 armor penetration.
Well, Ultimate's not going to be doing so well. Doesn't land a single shot. Will only get the CDR return from 1 bullet.
And awkwardly,
and
Score is on a ward.
Yep. And that's going to be the blue buff going over to Faker.
Yeah. That's the thing that SK Telecom showed, is although they had that short vacation since the end of MSI to their match 2 days ago, they're still on form. They still know their win conditions. Their play around the Trundle pick in Game 1 against CJ Entus was beautiful to see, setting up that Trundle to have a split push advantage. And just everything that we've seen from them in now soon to be 3 games is very ordered play. They see something, they call it out, scores in the bottom lane, instant rotation to take the enemy blue buff. Also capitalizing on the pressure that Faker has from just dominating this mid lane matchup. So always a pleasure to watch SKT playing on form.
You know, I just watched Faker playing this Azir in this game, and it begs the question, why ban Lucian instead of the Azir on the blue side for KT Rolster?
Because you trust in the counter pick, and there's been times that Fly has been able to make counter picks work. We remember him, KT leaving open Rise and then taking Malzahar and dismantling a mid lane Rise. But you know, sometimes your confidence in your mid laner to play the counter matchup or an off-meta matchup comes back to haunt you in situations like this.
Yeah.
Now, if you
50 CS down, though, now, at this point. And he just got the Blasting Wand for that Rod of Ages. Yep. Well, he gets the flash over the wall, but here comes the tidal wave. It's going to pop him up, bubble as well to collapse on top of him, and Score will find the kill.
Range support problems right there. I'm going to
yeah.
put down some vision, clear some odds on this.
Well, now this is a bank prop. Flashes out to get away from that curtain call, but it's not going to matter. The bubble connects yet again from Machani, who's having a good showing on this Nami thus far. Baker going to go straight in on the Fly, gets locked up by the Q stun, has to pop the heal and try to keep himself alive. Baker goes in, gets the Emperor's Divide down. Score getting popped over into the wall. The Lamb's Respite comes down to keep himself alive. Baker looking like he wants to turn this one back around with the arrival of Blank. Duke and Someday keeping each other busy up in the top side. Someday actually might win this. Duke still has the ultimate available. Should Duke back now, there it is. And he will be able to walk out safely. So Faker making up for that kill over on the Wolf.
Faker sparing his team's blushes. A storyline as old as competitive league itself, it feels like at this point.
Yeah.
So they'd already gotten those 2 kills, so this is just an exit route, but Fly gets really, really cute. He thinks he's buying time for his team, instead just gets hugely outplayed by Faker, who just turns on to Score, walking into 2 Sand Soldiers. Doesn't matter that his ult and summoners are down.
Yep.
And SKT, just with that pressure, push into mid, get the mid inner turret to half health. The Faker show has been renewed for another season very clearly.
Problem, though. Nice repel there by Blank to dodge the root from the Twisted Advance, and he will go ahead and flash away to safety. So keeping himself safe away from Someday.
Faker only being the 2nd best Azir player on his team to teams looking at...
Very nicely played by SKT.
I like that we've come full circle from 6-11 patch notes to be like, finally, we can hold down Faker.
I mean, we still haven't seen those Mage Rework champions come out for him, so I'm sure he's got a lot of picks up his sleeve that he can pull out at a moment's notice.
Decides to go for the casual Azir split push. It's going to work out just fine.
I mean, look at this turret
this
just
much
going
ability
down.
power.
Yeah.
And then the top lane, KT are losing advantages left, right, and center. The only winning lane they had was Maokai with the roam to counter the Infernal Drake. He's now behind in CS as well. 70 plus CS. We're looking at a mid lane Flame Horizon, which happens very rarely in pro play. And in the bot lane, CS advantage stayed about the same for Bang.
Yep. Bang, though, speaking of which, going to get rooted here, taking a ton of damage. No way for him to get out of that one alive.
Well, pass marks for the Jhin. The Jin's been working out. Score's actually having a great game. It's just they are really being held down by the hole between the mid lane as Fly is so far behind. Honestly, it's very Kuro-esque performance here by Fly, you have to say, where he's had some good games against lesser opposition, but just another player that really misfiring against Faker.
Yeah. Arrow, though, as you mentioned, doing a really good job on the Jhin. Still down in gold overall by comparison.
But they're making the
CS
plays, right? That's the story.
The W's are constantly landing. He's always rooting people in place when it matters, and a big example is right there on Bang, just catching him, and they lock him down. There's just nothing that he can do. Wolf saying, you know what, it's not even worth it for me to use the wish to try to keep you alive. I know that you're done so.
And this goes by Pop just to get away from the parallel convergence. So now we're going to have Aurelion Sol split push, and it's what you can do even with the lack of teleports. They do technically have a map pressure choice because SKT have to contend with Faker and Bang, neither of which want to be in a side lane at this point in the game, whereas Aurelion Sol can make those plays. So they were able to push the minion wave up very aggressively in bot, but not enough to take the turret, unfortunately for them.
Shot Barrage just to interrupt that back from scores. He takes a little bit more damage. The Sand Turret at mid doing a good job of being a little bastion for SK Telecom to sit behind. And we have a third Infernal Drake!
Scripted.
Yep. Well, this could have been 24% increase for SK Telecom. They let the second one slip through their grasp, but not going to happen here with the third as they go ahead and start this one up. There's nobody nearby from KT, so it's going to be 16% stats now in the bank for SK Telecom. And to follow up, it's going to be a Mountain Drake coming up next.
That feel when the dragon is on the script. They know exactly what they're doing.
This doesn't happen in my solo queue games. I always get like triple air and ocean or cloud or something like that. I never get the good ones. Faker, though, going in aggressive again. Someday throws out the Emperor's Divide. He's taking a ton of damage. Fly is floating his way in. Wolf as well coming up here to support his mid laner. The heal's coming through. Wish gets popped. Faker getting locked up. Looks like he's going to go down, and he does. The teleport coming in from Duke. Can they find anything? Cocoon lands on the score. Into the parallel convergence. Not going to connect in time.
Look at the damage,
Duke has to snap back, and now Blank getting knocked up by that bubble. Has to start backing off as the Jhin has arrived as well. And you can see just from those few auto attacks, he's starting to hurt.
Yeah, Jhin, when he finally rotated, was putting out a lot more damage than Bang at this point in the game. Even though the 2 items are clear for Bang, the 1 item power spike into a second serrated Dirk was doing massive burst. Faker was the first person there. Finally, everyone is reacting to make it to top lane. It's a nice kill from Faker. It was very clear that KT would be the first to rotate. Fly did have his E interrupted. That's why he wasn't there as early as possible.
Yeah.
Maybe Maokai would have lived and got a couple more Sap Magic passives, but just watch the damage from Jhin when he enters the fight. 3 autos basically take down the Magic resist stacking top laner, and then they turned on to Elise. So damage-wise, KT, very much competitive, and the gold is only less than 3,000, so we still have a game in this first series.
And it's only going to get worse for SKT as far as that damage goes from Arrow's Jhin, because they have that 8% stacking on the Infernal Drake. As he gets towards max items, that's a huge amount that he's going to be getting as a bonus. Imagine if we get another Infernal Drake and they're able to pick it up, and suddenly he's getting a 16% increase. It'll be just monstrous.
And that's the fun thing to think about with Jhin. Because he doesn't interact with attack speed as other champions, he doesn't crave it as a statistic. Probably will fit in a single Zeal item, but it's not a massive system. It's SKT.
Oh, wow.
They have 2 Infernal Drakes, so that doesn't actually affect how it works against Baron. No mountains, but this is a story as old as can be. And Soraka to heal up lane to allow him to continue to tank. KT have no idea. They're starting to smell, but this Baron is super low.
Yeah, the pings are coming out, but it's all too late. It's going to go down, and everybody can exit safely. Blank having to use the flash, as does Wolf, to get out of the backside of the pit. But Baron picked up for SK Telecom here at the 23.5-minute mark. Nice, sneaky play.
Didn't even need a Mountain Drake to take that one. We talked about how with Mountain Drake interacting with Baron, those sort of sneaks would become more and more common if we saw 2 Mountain Drakes early. The Infernal Drake doesn't affect damage against Baron, but the Soraka coming back into the meta to be able to heal up the solo tanking Elise, and Faker being so far ahead made that a really safe Baron.
Yeah. I just looked at the numbers there for Fly. He had about a 17-minute Rod of Ages.
Very much on the late side, but just coming back to specifically Infernal Drake with Jhin, you also have the fact that because he doesn't interact with attack speed, both Mountain Drake and the extra 10%, 20%, 30% damage to turrets does interact very well with him. And the Infernal Drake, you know, the AD stacking feels like he's going to have a couple of AD death caps when it comes to multiplicative AD. So the Jhin, at least on that front, very much fits the current dragon-focused meta.
Yep. So, riddle me this, Papa. We're seeing Blank playing this Elise, something that he, as you mentioned, pulled out at MSI, was very successful with. But we also know that this is one of Bengi's champions as well, with the Elise and the Rex side. What game scenarios do you see where we're going to see SKT actually put Bengi in instead of Blank? Because yesterday was kind of like maybe potentially a one-off there against CJ Entis, who's not been looking good. They're 0-4 at the moment. Do you think that there's a future for Bengi to still be coming back into these games, or do you think it was just like, okay, it's first game of the split, why not?
I think very much there is. I mean, the story with Bengi was always that a control jungler meta fit him very well. And I think SKT getting both of them stage experience is a massive boon for them, because if they're against a team that keeps pinching the jungle pool, play Blank, who's shown that he can play control, but is obviously a lot more adept than Bengi at playing the Kindreds and Nidleys of the world. And if it's a different scenario where you need that experience and veteran status, put in Bengi. So I like the fact they're going to be able to mix and match depending on both how the meta and how their opponents line up against them.
We'll see as the split goes on how many appearances Bengi will be able to make. Duke, though, going to get jumped on in this top side. Parallel convergence will lock up score. Wolf and Bang arriving from the sidelines. Getting a lot of damage down onto the Kindred, but the Lamb's Respite will come down in time to keep himself alive. Wolf almost getting hit by that bullet, but it doesn't matter because Someday finishes off the kill all the same. And it looks like Maokai will be able to walk out. So a fight initiated just about by SK Telecom. Going to lose their support for this one. Meanwhile, though, Faker's splitting off in the bottom side. Using these Baron-empowered minions to get in on the fly.
Can do nothing against the Baron buff minions. He cannot clear. He has to deal and contend with Faker free autoing. So this is panic stations for KT. They need to send multiple members, and that's why you see Maokai enter in bot.
Yep. Not a whole lot that he can do to him. Actually, he does have a Void Staff completed, so Faker actually could deal with Someday in a bit of time.
10 CS short of the Flame Horizon.
He's getting there. Just 8 to go now at this point. And he's going to be working towards it as he goes over and takes these Krugs.
And the funny thing about this game is that, you know, we talked about the Elise pressure pick, you know, taking that Elise jungle over some of the other choices like Graves, for example, whether it was MSI or today, about getting pressure onto the lanes because Blank had been pretty anonymous. He hasn't necessarily been anonymous, but he has 2 out of 6 kill participation. And it's honestly been, as I said, the Faker show. He's been the one solo making plays. His bot lane goes down, he rotates, kills the enemy mid laner in transition. So, you know, sometimes Blank, it's appreciated when he has big games, but sometimes Faker will just do it all on his own.
Yep. See, though, taking out that Mountain Drake with the help of Bang. So now 3 dragons in the pocket of SK Telecom, and that damage to structures and that damage to Baron as it gets ready to come back up in the next couple minutes is going to be pretty monumental here for SK Telecom's success. Faker goes back. He has another needlessly large rod now in the inventory for what we can only imagine is going to be a Rabbidan's Death Cap.
We should continue to track the build from Arrow as well. So it went from Yomu's Ghostblade into more Malmortius. So almost looks like an AD caster build of Yor. And, you know, Jin has that interesting kit anyway when it comes to how he's built. But this allows him to battle in the front lines. He's against Echo, who will be diving and doing incidental magic damage. Elise, of course, as well. And the Azir and the incidental magic damage from Ezreal. So there is a lot of magic damage from the side of SKT. But it's interesting to see this battle build from Jin because it's just so different from the other flavors of Jin build that we've been exposed to.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's been pretty set in their ways with either the Essence Reaver or the Infinity Edge.
Or both at some point.
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about gold, and now with that pickaxe in his inventory, we can only assume that it's going to be strictly a starting items. But yeah, coming out with the Yomu is definitely out of left field. First item going towards an Infinity Edge, maybe for a Last Whisper, but
the AD carry item builds have basically been an arms race.
Oh, wow, Hachani just going to go down. Faker and Bang doing so much damage.
Watch the Jin.
Straight through the Mermaid. Faker going to be trying to eat all these body shots for Bang. He will be able to block all of the shots aside from the first one. So Bang's still low. Faker pushing out the Emperor's Divide, taking a lot of damage. Arrow goes in, trying to finish him off. He's got that Hex Trigger shield, but it doesn't matter. Faker finishes him off as he flashes over the wall for the skill points. And now you can see Blank eating up those tower shots. The wave crashing in. He's going to be able to reset aggro, and they will find themselves a tier 2. So 3 for 0 plus tower and maybe more for SK Telecom.
The prospect of killing Faker baited KT and specifically baited a backline AD carry like Jin to try and flash over the Emperor's Divide. Wish was still available. Faker was still completely on form, completely outfoxed Arrow, and now they break the base and are looking set to go, SK Telecom.
Yep, you see Someday pushing forward, but even so, still taking a ton of damage from Faker with that Azir. And the inhibitor goes down in the top side.
It's just so amazing as an AD carry to play on the same team as Faker because the amount of aggro this one player draws is insane. So watch this fight. The ultimate from Jin is actually super on point. 2 shots onto Bang. The 4th one probably would have killed him with a Deathfire touch prop. It looks like Faker is completely caught out, but he has both summoners up and Soraka Wish available, Arrow gets so greedy. He doesn't have the consistent damage to go against Faker, and then Wish comes through. But what I mean is, Fang this whole time is basically untouched in the backline, because just like every team that Faker has been on, everyone wants to kill Faker.
Yeah. He also flashed on top of the Empress Divide, so he still got popped up when he came over that wall, so that denied him damage. So he actually could have finished Faker off if he had
I think one extra auto wouldn't have made the difference. Needed 2, and only 1 was denied from that interaction. The result, still, Jhin is not an AD carry that gets into short range wherever possible. He wants to be in spellcast range only. Duke's taking a lot of free damage, but...
He is. He's eating up his front line here. He's going to go ahead and use the ultimate, so... Flash down as well there for Dukes. It's interesting that he was sitting there soaking all of that. But now SK Telecom. Baron has respawned. Dragon still a couple minutes out. But they have that wave of super creeps building up at the top side. You can see it's accumulating pretty well at the moment. So it's definitely going to have to be answered. And it's going to be Fly that goes back to try to take care of it.
Worth knowing that even with all his extra shops, Faker is at 4 items, and that is 4 expensive core items compared to 2.5 on the side of Fly.
Yeah. Well, they know that Fly's taking care of that wave up at the top side, so they're going to move over to this Baron, get some vision down.
I mean, take a look at the minions, though, Achilles. If you look at the numbers, there's nobody making it up for KT. There's losses across the board. Yep. KT literally have been run around the map to the point, or to the tune of 50+ minions that have died to turrets that they just haven't been able to get to compared to SKT.
To his credit, Hachani is beating Wolf.
Yeah.
So he's got that going for him. But speaking of Hachani, taking a ton of damage, Tidal Wave comes out. True Shot Barrage, not going to connect. Nice double bubble as well to keep himself up. But yeah, not looking good here for KT Rolster. Flash now down on the Nami. Duke going to get engaged on by Score, taking a bunch of damage.